Hello, brother. Tonight we're going to go over the Q&A version, study version of the King of the North. We have been studying the situation in the Middle East right now, and for those of you that haven't been paying real close attention over there, we'd like to give you an update. For the last, I want to say 6 months, year now, ISIS has basically been defeated over there, and it's because Russia, in conjunction with Syria, with some help of Iran and Turkey, have basically defeated ISIS. And you notice I left out United States. Well, the United States has not defeated ISIS. In fact, the United States, from all the information that we're able to gather, and we've looked into it pretty deeply, basically was in cahoots. And I know it's a sad thing to realize, but we remember that the scriptures say that the two-horned beast will speak as a dragon. Well, what do dragons do? They mislead, they falsify, they speak untruths, lies. Basically, it's sad to say, but without Russia and those other nations that we just mentioned, ISIS would still be very much alive, with the sole goal of defeating the legitimate government of Syria. So what's happened is that now that the United States has been by proxy defeated by Russia, they're not happy. They're not very happy at all. And as you can see by watching the more neutral site, RT Today, news site, you can get more of a fuller picture. And what's happening is that they're still trying to hang on with some of their personnel, some of their supportive groups that are trying to topple the Assad Syria regime. And it's getting into a situation where the United States is with Israel, and the Jews, the Israel government, is now, or has been the last year or so, bombing indiscriminately so-called threats coming from Syria. Well, I got to keep in mind that Israel and the United States is in cahoots here, and their goal is one and the same. That's to replace the regime of Assad, just like they replaced the regime of Ukraine, just like they replaced the regime of Libya, Egypt, all those other countries in that area. Afghanistan, they're working on that, but anyway, what it is this is all formation of the great gigantic war spoken of in track 14, page 22. And that verse, again, we've said this many times, but this is a very important one to remember. While the world is engaged in a gigantic war, this will be over the Middle East, the Holy Land, then it is that the wicked will be cut off from the church. So Ezekiel 9 will happen once those bombs start flowing over there. And that prophesies Zechariah 14:2 war and the Nahum war begin to take shape in the Middle East. So when this situation happens, Daniel 11:45 will become truth, and he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. And we wanted to do the Q&A tonight over this study because recently we did a live in-person study with some Present Truth believers at our home, and we didn't have a a real good feeling that the complicated subject of the King of the North was presented so that they could get a good grasp of it. So we've been supping with the Lord, and we figured out, well, let's do a Q&A on this topic, and maybe it'll be seen a little more clearly, because the King of the North is very important, because right now he reigns. King of the North reigns, and what I mean by that, he's reigning over God's holy land, over the glorious land, which is what the scriptures and the rod and so forth describe as Israel. And King of the North is doing a illegitimate ruling of this land, and shortly God's going to put an end to it, and none shall help him. But who is again? This is our second or third study we've done now on the YouTube channels. Who is this King of the North? It's good to know exactly who the players are, because we're observing the things as they're happening. Right now we're seeing these things happen in our midst, and we should be prepared, because the dominoes are going to start falling. And if we have a good conception of truth, we'll be able to follow along and know pretty much what is existing in the time events and the timeline, and it'll be helpful for us. So we're going to base this post on our blog post that, in fact, we just put up tonight, and it's called Q&A Study Version of the King of the North. So we'll present that now. This study is an advanced present truth study. If you are not well advanced yet in the Lord's rod message, Micah 6:9, this may be confusing. Nevertheless, you are welcome to follow along, but if it's not well understood, don't worry about it. In other words, what we're trying to say is that this is more of an extracurricular study, and it's not necessary that you understand everything completely, and neither do we claim that we do, because this King of the North subject, as we'll go into, is complicated. It's not, as we said many times before, it's not one of those easily discerned subjects, and that's why you see today in the SDA and the Davidian Seventh-day Adventist and Reform and all kinds of these different movements, they have different ideas of who the King of the North is. The Pope, some say it's United States right now. Many of the Davidians say it's United States right now. Some also say, that are pure rodist, that believe in the pure message of the rod, as we'll go into shortly, that England, Great Britain, has not relinquished her crown yet on this matter. And so there's a lot of different identifications here of the King of the North. Okay, so let's begin by our first question. Keep in mind this will be a series of question and answers, and we'll be able to give the answers from Thus saith the Lord, from the rod, spirit prophecy, scriptures. Whenever we do a study, it's always important that we back up our answers with a Thus saith the Lord. Anytime you go to a study and some guy's giving the answers, but you see very little quoted from the inspiration, you can bet that it's most likely a situation where the person put on the study is interjecting his own tube into the golden bowl, his own pipe, and that's a big no-no. Okay, so the first question is, what particular circumstances or facts qualify to be considered King of the North and King of the South? And our answer comes from track 12, page 86 and 87. After dividing of Alexander's dominion, Egypt and Palestine were, as previously seen, ruled first by the Ptolemy's, second by pagan Rome, Daniel 11:15 and 16, third by Daniel 11:22, and fourth again by Christians, specifically Great Britain, Daniel 11:41. These are the only historically and prophetically recorded supersessions involving the ancient lands of Egypt and Palestine. The surrendering of these countries by one prophetic king to the other unmistakably identifies the king of the north and the king of the south from the time of the dividing of Alexander's empire to the present time, and leaves no doubt or argument. Rome's, the king of the north, entering a second time into the glorious land, Daniel 11:41, shows that though, as aforementioned, it once took the land from the Ptolemies, Daniel 11:16, it later, in 633 A.D., lost it to the Turks, and in 1919, in the time of the end, wholly regained it. Here is simple proof that in modern times the Bohemian rulers are in prophecy called King of the South, while England's kings, along with the disrupted family of Christianized kings, whom prophecy says will not cleave one to another, Daniel 2:43, are called King of the North. Track 12, page 86 to 87. So we see clearly that the Rod message tells us that the Bohemian rulers are in prophecy called the King of the South, and England's kings, along with the disrupted family of Christianite kings, are called the King of the North. But we see also here from this answer from the Rod is that the King of the North must rule or have ruled over the glorious land, and they must have entered it to take possession. And this we see as a historical progression. Ptolemy's first, pagan Rome second, pagan Rome again, Rome again, third, and fourth, disrupted Christianite kings, specifically Great Britain. Okay, let's go on to the second question. Does SOP, Spirit Prophecy, describe who is the King of the North? And that answer can be found in Word to the Little Flock. Okay, this is the Rod quote that we're going to read, Symbolic Code, Volume 2, Number 1, page 8, and addresses what the Spirit Prophecy said. Keep in mind, Symbolic Code, Volume 2, Number 8, was in the very beginning of the message. So this happens to be, I believe, I want to say 1934, 1935, right in there, very beginning time of the message. Okay, it reads, A Word to the Little Flock, one of the earliest SDA publications, in which Sister White says, I saw all that would not receive the mark of the beast or of his image in their foreheads or in their hands could not buy or sell. I saw that the number 666 of the image beast was made up. Page 19. Michael is to stand up at that time that the last power in chapter 11 comes to his end, and none to help him. This power is brought to view in Revelation 13, verses 11 to 18. His number is 666. That's found on page 8 and 9 of Word to the Little Flock. The above explains that the two-horned beast is the one to whom the number 666 belongs, and that this beast of Revelation 13, 11 to 18, and the King of the North of Daniel 11:45 are the same power. Therefore, the nation represented by this particular beast and the King of the North, or the man who is to be the head king of that nation in the time when the image beast, the two-horned, enforces the worship of his image, whose image is nothing less than the thing he made, are to make a likeness to the real religio-political system of the beast before him, the leopard-like beast of Revelation 13:1-10. That is, a likeness of the papal system in the period before the leopard-like beast received his deadly wound. As the fulfillment of this prophecy is yet future, we cannot now tell who will then be the head king of the north of this prophetic nation, modern Babylon, that is symbolized by the two-horned beast. Again, this reference is found in Symbolic Code, Volume 2, Number 1, page 8. This is my words now. This reference is packed with clues. Spirit Prophecy declares that the king of the north is the same as the two-horned beast. Then the rod makes a more detailed summary. Notice that the king also shall be head of the nation represented by the two-horned beast, USA. And when is this to be? Clearly, in the time when this image beast, the two-horned, enforces the worship of his image. Now, this pinpoints the timing of the USA's role as king of the north. Not before the image is enforced, but when it is enforced. Let us not escape this. Let this not escape us, as it will be helpful as we proceed. So I want to go over that real quickly. That in this verse, in this early publication from the Rod, Symbolic Code, Volume 2, Number 1, page 8, it makes mention that this king of the north / USA is to be the king in the time when this image beast enforces the worship of his image. So we have to remember that this is our first detailed timing from inspiration. And notice it doesn't say before the image beast is formed. It says when this image beast enforces the worship of his image. So this is very helpful for us as identifying when the United States is the king of the north. Okay, let's go to question number 3. Does the rod differ from the spirit of prophecy as to who this king is now and in the future? This is the answer from the rod. This is found in One Timely Greeting, number 4, page 22. Since those who ask the question agree with us that we are now living in the time of the end, we need not say more concerning that phase of the subject. But we do need to have them tell us which power at this particular time, in the time of the end, has added the glorious land, Palestine, Egypt, and other countries to his empire. The answer that anyone can give is that Great Britain took these from Turkey and has virtually ruled them ever since. Plainly then, during the time of the end, Great Britain is king of the north and Turkey is king of the south. Again, this reference is found in 1 TG number 4, page 22. We'll continue. The statement, he shall come to his end and none shall help him, implies that someone has been helping him, and the world knows that it has been the United States of America. We therefore find ourselves living in between verses 44 and 45 of Daniel 11. And that's the same reference, but that's page 23, 24. While the Ottoman Empire has been shrinking since 1669 AD, the British Empire has been expanding, and it today rules Egypt and Palestine. Hence, today Turkey is the king of the south and Great Britain the king of the north. We all know that Great Britain has been helped by the United States of America more than once. But if we rightly understand this verse, the events of which are but a continuation of those found in verse 44, the king will surely come to his end and none shall help him. From the study of the 11th chapter of Daniel, we have learned several positive truths. 1. That the time of the end began in the 18th century. 2. That the king of the south is the Ottoman Empire. 3. that the king of the north at the present time is Great Britain in particular. That reference is found in 2TG number 7, page 9 and 10. Okay, these are my words here. We see that the rod, unlike the spirit of prophecy, announced who was, at the time around 1947, the king of the north, and it was Great Britain. Spirit prophecy showed that the last power, the last future king, shall be the U.S. and the head of the nation, of that nation. But the rod describes that Great Britain leads before that time. So the simple answer is no. The rod does not differ from spirit prophecy. Rather, it sheds more light as to current events. Okay, let's go on to question 4. Does the rod identify a transfer of Great Britain to another king of the north prior to the last king of the north, which is United States? Answer, Daniel 11:45. And he shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas in the glorious holy mountain, yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. The only portion of Daniel 11 yet to be fulfilled in this verse, the last chapter, and since prophecies are made to be understood only when they are being fulfilled or after fulfillment, verse 45 is not as clear as we should like it. Boy, isn't that the truth? Consequently, concerning the place of his tabernacles and his end, also as to whether another Christian power shall inherit the title King of the North before verse 45 is fulfilled, only time itself will positively portray the whole truth. That answer is found in 2TG number 42, page 27. So again, this question number 4 was, does the rod identify a transfer of Great Britain to another king of the north prior to the last king of the north, which is the United States? And this is my words. No. There is no writings that show an identification of any power after the rod showed Great Britain as the king of the north. For one thing, as we learn, no other power has ruled the glorious land since the rod established the fact in 1947 of Great Britain. The United States definitely has not ruled the glorious land since then. But let us not be confused. Somehow the United States will supersede Great Britain after Michael stands up and will be the final king of the north. That is why we say this is deep and complicated. So it's important to understand what we just read. In all of the rod writings, which is the restoring truth, don't forget, this is a restoring truth that the Lord sent, and he wants to clear up all these little misconceptions and misunderstandings, is that once the rod established in its right, specifically in 1947-1948, that Great Britain was the king of the north. There was no doubt about it. We wanted to know, if we study the rod writings out all the way, will we find a transfer of Great Britain to another nation? I mean, could it be, United States? Could it be Catholics, Roman transfer, anything? But it doesn't. It just stops at Great Britain and does not show any others. Okay, let's go to number 5, question number 5. Hasn't Great Britain been removed as ruler of the glorious land today? Aren't the Jews there now the current rulers? This is a very good question. Who's to say that Great Britain is now ruling this land when all we see is just the state of Israel? The Jews run their own land. They're ruling their own land, right? Okay, let's see the answer. Truly amazing, this is my words now, truly amazing how inspiration knows the deep things of the world. The leading force, the king, behind Great Britain has been for centuries the Rothschilds. Thus, as the Rothschilds go, so does Great Britain. And the rod showed that Great Britain had the power over the glorious land, and it still does. As many know, this Great Britain family has had the power of treasures of gold and silver and over the precious things of Egypt. And that's concerning Daniel 11:43. Remember that this king of the north shall have power over the treasures of gold and of silver and all the precious things of Egypt. And we know there's no other family or individuals that have this power to the extent that one family does. And that's the Rothschilds. History shows that in 1917, the Balfour Declaration originated from the Rothschilds. They have basically owned Israel since then. Behind the surface titles and national declarations lurk Great Britain / Rothschilds. Now, it is not obvious to the surface studier, but once we look into it, we find the following facts. And this was taken from JewishVirtualLibrary.org. And what we're going to read now is the individual ownership of the State of Israel. The Jewish National Fund and Development let's see, an estimated 93% of the country's total land area, excluding occupied areas of the West Bank and Gaza, is owned by the state or quasi-state agencies. Adding to this is also the Zionist movements within Israel, which is controlled by the Rothschilds as well. And we're going to put a link in this post that we're doing tonight, and you'll be able to go on to it. It's an excellent YouTube video explaining the specific ownership of Israel right now by the Rothschilds. They get into details and stuff, and so it's really helpful. And I'll post that at the in the description area of this post. Okay, number 6. Why does some present truth believers teach that the current king of the north is the USA? Now, one of the reasons that motivated us to do these King of the North posts is because we kept hearing reports and hearing from other brothers, present truth believers, that many of them are saying, well, it's easy, don't you know that it's the United States right now is King of the North, and something in the back of our minds just didn't click. I mean, I had read some raw references, and so I undertook a deep study to find out, where do they get this from, the United States? And that's why we posted these posts here, because it's not very accurate. If you take out the whole picture of the Rod message, that we can now say that the King of the North is the United States. It's not backed up at all. So the answer to number 6 is, we believe that because Spirit Prophecy makes the statement in Words of the Little Flock that the last power will be United States, and that the Rod confirms it in the earlier writings, we just assume that because we are in the very last days, the USA's time is now and here. So this assumption here is that we're basically assuming. But unfortunately, the whole picture of all the statements cannot support such idea. Great Britain is still the King of the North, and it's still ruling Israel. And until she is dethroned, the passage of this title to the USA is still future. Okay, let's go on to question 7. If Great Britain is now King of the North, when does it come to its end? And the first quote comes from Zechariah 14:2. For I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle, and the city shall be taken, and the houses rifled, and the women ravished, and half of the city shall go forth into captivity, and the residue of the people shall not be cut off from the city. In view of the fact that Jerusalem is to be protected by a wall of fire, Zechariah 2:5, while the house of Judah reigns there, it is definite that the battle here described must be fought before the house of Judah is established. In that battle, the nations will defeat the rulers of the promised land. Then it is that the house of Judah commences to be set up. That answer is found in 1 TG, number 19, page 3 to 4. Okay, these are my words now. Okay, let's really zoom in now. This very important reference has some key clues. We know that Zechariah 14:2 is concerning the time of the final gigantic battle over the glorious land Israel. It is at this time that Great Britain / Rothschilds come to their end. She will no longer rule the promised land. Then it is that the house of Judah commences to be set up. And let's review some other inspired statements at this time. 1 TG, number 4, page 22. Plainly then, during the time of the end, Great Britain is king of the north and Turkey is king of the south. And then the second quote, Symbolic Code, volume 2, number 1, page 8. The nation represented by this particular beast and the king of the north, or man who is to be head king of that nation in the time when the image beast, two-horned, enforces the worship of his image. So adding it all up, we see that Great Britain comes to her end at the gigantic war, and then the United States, the last king of the north, comes on the scene. In the time when the image beast enforces the worship of his image. In other words, Great Britain is dethroned at the gigantic war, and subsequently the United States is the final king of the north per inspiration's prophetic fulfillment. Let us keep clearly in mind that the rod gives us only one solid setting as to when the United States, final king of the north, will be in power. And that is in the time of the enforcement of the image, and that cannot be until after Ezekiel 9 church judgment. So it's very important, if we'll study all the writings of the rod, what we'll find is that only one place does it ever give that the specific time when the United States will rule as the last power, the last king of the north. And that is in the time of enforcement of the image beast upon the nations. So this is very important to understand, that anytime we run into a study by a brother or whatever, and they're saying now the United States is ruling as the final king of the north, it's not backed up by the rod, so they're shooting at the wind. They're making things up. They're making a false assumption based on their ideas. So we have to be very careful of that. Okay, let's go to number 8, the final question. If the United States takes over as king of the north from Great Britain, how is she to rule the glorious land if the house of Judah is established there? Okay, this is our answer. We have to admit this is a true puzzle. The only explanation we can come up with is that the final king of the north, the United States, has a waiver of the rule requirement as a secondary application. We just don't really know. As the rod says, only time itself will positively portray the whole truth. And that reference right there, only time itself will positively portray the whole roof. 2 TG number 42, page 27. Okay, this is our words. We would like to offer some ideas about this complex situation. From looking at this from a whole perspective, we see a double application of Daniel 11:45. I think if we really understand everything, we're going to have to say to ourselves, Daniel 11:45 has a double application. Let us remember that double applications are a well-known biblical usage. We see that time and again in many areas of the scriptures. For instance, let's look at Peter in Acts. This is a prime example of a double application. This is quoted from Acts chapter 2. I don't have the page here, but anyway, you can find it as chapter 2 in Acts. And we quote, "But Peter, standing up with the 11, lifted up his voice and said unto them, you men of Judea, and all ye that dwell in Jerusalem, be this known unto you, and hearken to my words. For these are not drunken, as ye suppose, seeing it but the third hour of the day. But this is that which was spoken by the prophet Joel. And it shall come to pass in the last day, saith God, I will pour out my Spirit upon all flesh. And your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, and your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams. And my servants and my handmaidens I will pour out in those days of my Spirit, and they shall prophesy. And I will show wonders in the heavens above, and the signs in the earth beneath, blood and fire and vapor of smoke. The sun shall be turned into darkness, and the moon into blood, before the great and notable day of the Lord come." Joel 2:14-20. Okay, these are my words. Today we can clearly see that although Peter said these true words, we know that the primary application of Joel is yet future. During his time, Peter, the Spirit was not poured out upon all flesh, but a small number among the vast amount of unbelieving Jews. Nor was the sun turned into darkness, and the moon into blood. Neither was this time right before the great notable day of the Lord. But to those who was in the hearing of Peter, it was still truth. So SOP's application of the King of the North being United States should be viewed as secondary, and the Rod's view as primary. Great Britain fits the true application because the power of treasuries, the ruling of the glorious land, and coming to his end in Zechariah 14:2 war, etc., shows the primary application to apply to Great Britain / the Rothschilds. We as present truth believers know also that spirit prophecy did not have the full light on another important event, and that is Ezekiel 9. The rod places it before the loud cry as the primary application, and the spirit of prophecy places it during the 7 last plagues secondarily. So again, we see several double applications, and this is what leads us to conclude that the primary application on the king coming to his end applies to Great Britain / the Rothschilds. This is clear from studying the whole picture. And the secondary application applies to the United States. And when we understand that, then we can see that the spirit of prophecy, just as it told us that Ezekiel 9 was in the time of the 7 last plagues, didn't have the clear light on the King of the North prophecy. And that's why we shouldn't, as present truth believers, step in today and promote the secondary application. We should promote the first only clear application, which means the Rothschilds, Great Britain, remember they're hand in glove, they go together, as the current King of the North. Okay, so let's go with our closing summary. As we promised, this study is complicated, yet if we set all the information before us, we can see a clearer picture. The King of the North / Great Britain Rothschilds are just about to come to their end. The world's financial system will collapse, and thus the Rothschilds will no longer be king, nor have any more rulership of the glorious land. Then the new focus will be the world's religion. Think about it. a gigantic war over Israel, and the Great Britain Rothschild Zionist baby is demolished to a large degree. And at this time, a shocking event happens worldwide within the Seventh-day Adventist Church. See track 14, page 22. And this will shock and awe the world. And will this turn the world's focus apart from money, riches to God? Of course. Then the United States, backed by the 666 man and the false prophet, shall set up its kingship to fulfill this vacuum. But even more importantly, the 144,000 take the scene, and Joel's prophecy comes to full primary application. The great controversy indeed. Oh, what a time to be alive. All these things are about to take place. So that concludes tonight's study. We wanted to make sure that we got a Q&A simplified version for you so that maybe this could come into a little better focus. And again, we emphasize that this study is extracurricular. It's good to know it, it's good to study it, but because of its complications, I think we cannot be dogmatic about it. And we shouldn't separate ourselves from brothers that disagree on this issue. We can present it as we see it, and let it be there. Let it stand there. And if they accept it, great. You know, we put a good basis of facts together for a clear idea, but yet we can't be forcing our opinion upon others in this study, because it's not. The Rod makes mention of a certain quote, I don't remember where, but if the truths are not practical and we can use it to draw closer to the Lord and become practicing truths, I think they use the term practicing truths, then it's not something we should be dogmatic about. So we'd like to close with prayer. Thank you, Lord, for letting us have this study with the brothers and sisters tonight. May they be guided into all truth, and may you continue to watch over any and all who profess your Lord, your Rod message. And we know that this is a very courageous message, and we also know that you've always placed a premium upon courage. So help us to be courageous and proclaim this message, yet be wise as serpent, harmless as doves. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.